Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. I have an email where people can send me stories, and today's story submission actually comes from that. It's at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com. It's a pretty emotional one, and it really got me thinking about player agency. You know what is one thing that really frustrates players? A forced cutscene at the game table, because unlike a video game, there are actually a lot of ways you can handle a really tense moment. Obviously, they can roll the dice and fail at what they're trying to do, but the beautiful thing about TTRPGs is the fact they get to try. In a video game, there's only so much that can be programmed ahead of time without creating a chain of cinematics that would bankrupt any developer. Well, maybe except Larian Studios. As a dungeon master, with a little bit of improv, you can completely change the course of your entire campaign during that tense moment without the players even realizing you did it. In fact, if you pull it off well enough, they'll call you a genius for predicting it all ahead of time. Today's treasure goes by the name My Biggest Mess Up as a Dungeon Master. Have you ever been doing campaign prep and had an idea that you loved but you couldn't find the right map? Or has your session ever gone in a direction you haven't prepared for but want to provide a fun encounter that feels like it was planned all along? dScryb is perfect as a tool to supplement and enhance homebrew campaigns and adventure books with its huge library of read-aloud text and film-quality ambience, sound effects, and music. Imagine a scenario where your party is supposed to be investigating a monster in the forest that is terrorizing the town, but an offhand comment you made about a goblin camp has the party captivated. Now you need to come up with a goblin camp on the fly or the party is going to be disappointed, and you don't know where to begin. If you use today's sponsor dScryb, you can come up with a quick battle map, a great description, and the perfect ambient music. They'll think that you planned it from the start. Use Loot Goblin when selecting your plan and get a free 30-day trial on any of the plans. So you can take it for a spin for your next session and see if you found it helpful without any risk. Click the link in the description and check out dScryb now. This happened almost a year ago, and only now I processed it enough to talk about it. The ending of this particular session had the whole party and myself in tears, both in character and at the table. Fair warning, the topics of this story can get pretty dark. It was my first real campaign I ever dungeon mastered. It had been going on for more than a year at this point, and everyone was having a great time. The players are as follows. Cleric, Fighter, Artificer had played since session 1. They were all super invested in the story and roleplay. Cleric was the only player character who had survived since session 1, so he was sort of the de facto leader of the group. Rogue and Druid were both new players and new additions to the group. Mind you, the party was level 9, so for new players to get into that, I knew it was going to be difficult as hell. But they were excited to try, and we were all more than willing to help them learn the game. Rogue had been with us for about 6 months, and he ate the game up. Within a few sessions, he was role-playing his heart out, making calls in the name of the party, and pulling creative and complicated moves in combat. The Druid, however, had only been with us about 3 sessions, and she wasn't really getting it. She was shy about role-playing, and her class was far more difficult to grasp than Rogue's, especially at high levels. The story: 4 sessions prior to the events, the party had ventured off to a faraway corner of the land in search of a buried ruin that was said to hold the main plot secrets that we were looking for. When they get to the strange land, they encounter 2 orphan kids who were born there, a girl who's 10 years old and her brother who's 7 years old. They offered to be the party's guides for the price of 1 gold. I thought it added some cute wholesomeness to the story, which it did. The party loved the kids. The girl was chatty, but the boy never spoke. More than that, he was following his sister around but never seemed to respond to any external stimuli, or do much, other than occasionally moving his eyes from left to right. So the party reached the sensible conclusion that he must have been possessed. Sessions later, Artificer used a magic item to cast True Sight on the boy, expecting to see what was wrong with him. There's a weird magic surrounding the kid, but nothing demonic or relating to any sort of possession in any way. You can't exactly pinpoint it. However, you do figure out that he is entirely asleep right now, full-blown REM sleep. His eyes actually start to do that thing again where they move rapidly from left to right. This intrigues them, and eventually they learn that the boy is something called a dreamwalker. I explained that dreamwalkers are creatures that go through life sleepwalking and are only ever awake when they dream, and they have the ability to infiltrate and command other people's dreams. They can also kill people in their dreams. There hasn't been one alive for over 100 years, and for good reason. About 2 centuries ago, an emperor was assassinated in his sleep by one of them, and after that it had been decreed that dreamwalkers are too dangerous to exist, so they were systematically killed. I made it clear and repeated this several times throughout the following sessions. If any form of authority learns of this boy's existence, the Empire will come after him with all all they have. They get it, and it only makes them more protective of the kids. There was this adorable scene where the kid goes missing and they find them in an alley, a group of older kids bullying the boy for not speaking. So they had a lot of fun using all the magic at their disposal to scar the bullies for life. Okay, maybe adorable isn't really the right word here, but it's definitely heartwarming, and please tell me you don't get the kid killed. Oh god, you're definitely gonna get them killed, aren't you? I bet you can tell where this is going by this point, but trust me, it gets so much worse than you think. So they find the ruin, but don't want to take the kids inside, which is a smart choice. It was towards the end of the session, pretty late in the night, when the players had just finished a long rest in a local tavern, and gathered in one of the rooms to think about their next move. During this time, the kids are both still asleep in the next room over. They decide to ask an NPC for help, a professor of magic that they worked with months ago and Artificer's mentor. They trusted the professor deeply, and for good reason. So Artificer casts Sending towards the professor, telling him how they found a Dreamwalker and asking him if he can watch over him for a little while. And now everything goes to shit, for you see the professor was, at the time, working with the Archmage of the Empire to figure out a different part of the main plot. They were both leading an expedition to a different part of the world, so they were on a ship together. Now the Archmage was the second highest authority figure in the Empire, after the Emperor himself. The players hadn't met him yet, but I had this character fully written out, and I was super excited to play him as one of the villains in the final act. He was also notoriously paranoid, constantly holding an aura of detect magic around him. I'm thinking, okay, so the Archmage and the Professor are probably in the same room. Archmage feels the Professor's receiving a message, of course he's going to cast Detect Thoughts and intercept it. I know how it sounds, but I really did not intend to put the kids in any danger, not now, not like this. But I thought it was also an amazing opportunity to roleplay the Archmage before its time, which I wanted to do so much, and also establish him as a force to be reckoned with when he does come up in the story as a villain. So I came up with this on the spot. The Archmage hears the message about the Dreamwalker, but doesn't believe it. There hasn't been one alive for 100 years after all. He thinks the party is either wrong about what they found or they're lying to the professor, but being paranoid, he's gonna go investigate. Me. You send the message but get no response. 1 minute passes, then another one, and then a loud noise breaks the silence as a blue portal opens in the middle of the room. Professor walks through the portal, but before you can say anything, a second figure follows him in. A bald, broad-shouldered mountain of a man with a thick gray mustache, wearing shining silver plate armor and a red ornate mantle that signifies his position as Archmage of the Empire. The Archmage greeted them politely, invited them to sit down, conjured pastries and coffee for everyone, and asked about this Dreamwalker thing while the professor was sitting silently, looking rather worried. The cleric speaks to the Archmage, and I play him as a stone-cold man who lets no emotions show up on his face, but his demeanor was gentle and polite. He asked his questions calmly and listened attentively to everything the cleric had to say. Now, I was just trying to scare them a little bit. He was going to ask about the Dreamwalker, but I was going to let my players get away easily. Maybe a low DC deception, and they're through. The Archmage didn't really believe Dreamwalkers existed anymore anyways. It was just meant to cement how influential and dangerous the Archmage is, and also how important it is that they keep the kid's identity secret. Archmage asks about the kid. He promises that he just wants to study and catalog the being, and that no harm will come to him. An obvious lie, I think, but the cleric actually believes him. Now, cleric has proven himself wise several times in the past. He was well aligned and the other players trusted his judgment, but this time apparently it was something about the way I played the Archmage, but cleric believed him instantly. He was going to tell him everything about the kid. I can't believe it. I keep role-playing, but in my mind I'm screaming, no, you can't do this, just tell him anything, literally anything else. Tell him that you are wrong about the Dreamwalker, that you are just trying to prank call the professor. I won't make him do detect thoughts. Won't even make you roll for it. Just tell a lie, any lie. But instead, cleric takes the Archmage straight to the room where the kids are sleeping and points at the boy. Okay, so this cleric obviously folded under literally zero pressure. As the dungeon master, it's on you a little bit to ask questions like, are you sure? You know, stuff that would get the party second guessing if their decision's the right decision. If you're actively screaming in your own head, oh my god, don't do this, please don't do this. This was always a possibility. One solution to introducing him and still having him be seen as a major threat would be letting him intercept the message, and then it becoming clear that the professor is now a prisoner and no longer a partner to the Archmage. Instead of there being no message in return and a portal just popping up where they walk through, maybe you actually allow the professor to send a message back saying that we're being monitored, and then later on give a description of this villain, make it very clear that he's now being held captive. I feel like whenever you have the big bad evil guy show up really early, one of two things happen. Someone who thinks that guy isn't really tough is going to try to take a swing at him, or someone really thinks this villain is cool and immediately wants to help them out. Now, I know the cleric is more accidentally an accomplice here, as opposed to just joining the dark side because he seems cooler, but unfortunately this is a scenario that does play out more times than you'd think. Alright, let's see what the bad guy does here. Archmage also casts True Sight on the sleeping boy, then raises his hand and with a swift silence spell turns the kid into dust. Oh god. His sister wakes up to find the scene and starts screaming and crying. Artificer and Rogue are starting to tear up. Cleric is in shock. Archmage, Professor, see to it that these fine people are rewarded properly for their service to the Empire. The Archmage then opens up a portal and walks away. The Professor goes down to the ground floor of the inn. The little girl is still crying over the brother's ashes. This is horrible. This is campaign ending horrible. Screw the campaign, this is permanent, real-life emotional scars kind of horrible. I didn't know how to save it. He didn't have to kill the kid right then and there though. Artificer goes to the girl and tries to console her. I make her roll Persuasion, natural 1. Me, the girl can't or won't listen to you. You try to hug her, she punches your shoulder with her little hands until you let go, then goes back to cry over her brother's ashes. Artificer, fully in tears, goes after the professor. At the ground floor of the inn, Professor, a known recovering alcoholic, is chugging drink after drink. Artificer approaches him, and we all have this full-blown screaming match between him and her. Artificer accusing the professor of bringing the Archmage here, him apologizing and saying he couldn't do anything about it, and that he blames himself too. It would have been an amazing roleplay moment hadn't it all been so tragic. I literally had no idea how to save this story, but then Cleric recovers, and he saves it for me. He feels guilty about everything. He goes to the girl and physically gets down on his knees as he roleplays the single most heartfelt monologue I've ever heard in D&D. He tells the little girl it's okay to scream and to cry, and he'll do so with her, and to take as much time as she needs, but her brother is not gone. Not entirely. He will still visit her in her dreams every night like he always did, and that they would still grow up together and have fun together. I don't even make him roll for it. This guy should be a trauma counselor. It was that good. More than that, it worked on every level. I could make the kid's spirit actually keep living in her dreams, and even if I didn't, she would keep dreaming about him regardless. So she might not tell the difference. It just worked. And then he continues, but there's one thing you must do first, and it might be the most difficult thing ever. You have to say goodbye. They go out, they dig a grave, and they put the boy's ashes inside. Cleric invites the girl to the edge of the grave and encourages her to say goodbye, and then all would be good. So she does. I make the most emotionally manipulating piano music play in the background as I start roleplaying the girl saying goodbye, speaking about the world, and it being shitty and unfair, but also beautiful, promising that she'd talk to him every night and tell him about her adventures. At this point, I'm full-blown crying at the table, while roleplaying a 10-year-old girl. God, this game is beautiful. Cleric, Artificer, and Rogue are also fully crying too, but it was good crying. It was wholesome, even somewhat beautiful. Sure, it was tragic, but we're playing the tragedy, living it, going through it naturally, making the best out of it, and growing together as characters and as people. Cleric's monologue completely saved the story, the campaign, and quite possibly our group dynamic. I keep role-playing the eulogy. Me, through tears. At least the mean boys won't get to you now. Druid, I walk up behind her and stab her through the heart. We all stop for the longest time. The crying stops. Only the music keeps playing as we all look at Druid, standing up, gesturing her hands, holding the dagger through the girl's heart. Then they look at me. I look down, all of a sudden the tears just feel ugly and cold and undeserved, so I wipe them. Me, the girl stops in the middle of the speech, coughs blood, then falls into the grave over her brother's ashes. I say nothing as I stand up and leave the room to go for a smoke. The session ends right after in a fit of anger and screaming and just sadness and discontent. Half the players messaged me the next day saying they're leaving the party because they didn't want to be part of a story where they kill kids for no reason, and I completely understood them. I didn't want to continue after that either. The year-long campaign that had gone on perfectly without any drama just ended. Now, I know what you're all thinking. I thought the same thing that night. We spoke about it as a group for weeks afterwards. conflict. Everybody was looking for someone to blame, everybody was upset, everybody was angry, especially the original 3 players who loved the game and the story and were dying to finish it. I took most of the blame for what happened and still do to this day. You have to understand, Druid was new to the game. Imagine being 3 sessions into your first TTRPG ever and seeing that unfold. She didn't read the vibe that the eulogy was wholesome and the girl was going to be fine after that. She thought she would grow up haunted by her brother's death and thought her character was sparing the kid's pain. Obviously, it was a stupid point to make, but Druid's character isn't a psychopath in real life. She saw what she did was wrong, as I explained it to her, and she was genuinely crushed that the game ended over her actions. Honestly, she was most affected out of everybody. She started questioning herself in real life and definitely didn't want to play any TTRPG ever again. I spoke to her at length about this, and I convinced everyone else to get off her back about it too. I convinced her to play in my second campaign, which she still does, and nowadays she's a gentle and involved role player. Her current character is, I dare say, the heart of the party. Okay, maybe too soon. But still, whenever the story gets thick and the stakes get high, I can see her being afraid to make any important choices in character. That's the story of how my first campaign ended. I know there was a lot of mistakes from lots of people, but I still take most of the blame for it. I didn't think of anything on the spot, but I could have made the Archmage kidnap the kid instead of killing him then and there. Give the party a chance to rescue him. I could have not forced the Archmage to arrive in the first place. Maybe I shouldn't have put the kid in that much danger to begin with. Either way, it feels good finally talking about this with someone outside the group who was there. What do you all think? So the person that submitted this story is definitely right. It is an emotional one. I like how there's really no true villain in this story. A lot of RPG horror stories have a problem player that never gets invited back. I do agree the Druid was kind of new here. I do like that you reflected here at the end, asking yourself why did you have to not take the kid prisoner, and why you had Archmage basically show up and escalate the situation, putting the kid in immediate danger when you really didn't have to, just for the sake of an introduction of this character. Clearly this writer here has a lot of good chops when it comes to planning out characters and then making good roleplay moments with those characters. The fact that the professor blamed himself, he went downstairs, they had that shouting match, and everyone kind of came to the conclusion that he was hard on himself, is a great piece of roleplay. Sadly, it came after a moment that didn't need to happen. So there is some signs that you can improv. Maybe you just didn't really know what to do in the moment. And when it comes to the Druid moment with the stabbing, you wanted it to play out because you didn't want to take away player agency. But one thing that's similar between the Archmage killing the first kid and the Druid killing the second kid, there was probably a window of opportunity where other people could take action. So for example, with the Archmage situation, once he gets into the room, once he casts the spell and confirms it's a Dreamwalker, maybe you have his demeanor noticeably change and him come off as a lot more ominous. Because at first you did play them as very gentle and polite, and the cleric picked up on that, mistakenly. So having a clear mood change like that where his facade's completely dropped and he's about to do something, and giving the party an opportunity to, either take the kid and run, try to attack him, literally do anything to make the situation better, would make them feel like they had more agency. And when it comes to the eulogy moment as well, you have a rogue, even clerics usually aren't that bad at perception. Someone probably would have noticed the Druid sneaking up on the kid. So just them approaching the kid with a weapon drawn that's sharp would have been an excuse for you to give the rest of the party a chance to at least see what's going on. Going back to what I said at the beginning, obviously, you don't want everything to feel like a cutscene. Usually people associate that just with the NPCs doing something that the party can't counteract, but sometimes when one party member's kind of doing something that the rest of the party definitely wouldn't approve of, that's kind of a cutscene too, where you're basically saying the Druid's player agency completely outweighs everyone else's player agency. Just think of a situation where you have a king and the bard comes in and says, "Oh, I instantly attack him," and the rest of the party definitely doesn't want that to happen. You would push back as a dungeon master, and I feel like this should be no different. I get that the kid's not going to be able to make the save, but maybe the rest of the party would be able to grapple the Druid or do something where a save can be made, So thank you for this email submission. I really like when there isn't a true villain in the story and it's just a bunch of people just kind of making mistakes, trying to improve on playing D&D. So if you have any stories like this or your own personal stories, make sure to share it at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com. That's where I usually try to find the majority of my stories that are submitted by the community. And if you like this kind of video, make sure to like and share the video. You can subscribe to see my videos when they come out, and become a member if you want to help support the channel further. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now.